Now we're moving over to Uganda, where Ugandans continue to bear the brunt of high fuel prices, despite assurance from the government that they would stabilize. For instance, in Moyo Town, boda riders said that the price of petrol was $5,400 to $6,000 shillings, I beg your pardon, per litre, even as they complained of being pushed out of the business if they increase the transport fares. Also, in some parts of Kalangala Islands, a litre of petrol currently goes for 8,000 shillings, which has also forced fishermen to suspend fishing.
Ugandans are, however, blaming the government for failing to find a lasting solution to the fuel crisis, yet they have the capacity to engage their global partners. Of course, we will be having a conversation about this sometime this morning, and I think it's very important as we deal with, petrol crisis, that seem to also be rising here in Nigeria. They seem to be having pretty similar situation there in Uganda, talking about 6,000 shillings for a gallon of petrol. That's pretty shocking. It seems like the world or the global energy crisis seems to be getting to Africa. That's the common excuse, that we've heard. Why the price of diesel seems to be increasing across the world. It's also increasing here in Nigeria, but also petrol. And it is a really, really very, very draining thing to have to be in a petrol queue.
I mean, 5,400 to 6,000 shillings is a huge margin. We're not saying 5,400 to maybe 5,500. Like 5,400 to 6,000 is a huge margin. Here in Nigeria, we complained, and even the government had to come out and say that anyone who dares, any petrol station that dares to increase the fuel more beyond 165 per litre should be shut down. So what we see here is when there is an increase in cost of fuel, it affects every sector. It affects transportation, it affects feeding, because the people who are getting the food, the farmers who are getting the food, have to go through transport, so they have to factor in that into their movement as well. Even now we're seeing that the fishermen have stopped fishing. It's affected their fishing because, of course, they need fuel to be able to power their boats to go out into the waters to fish. And so that's a really
I hope that there is some explanation. Because when these things happen, a lot of times there's really no concrete or legitimate reason why the price increases. Here, we are talking about the fact that they're trying to increase the pump price, and so in that period while they're negotiating, there will be some level of scarcity.
Absolutely.
Welcome once again, and now let's get into the conversation about petrol in Uganda. We're going to be speaking this morning with Ugandan journalist Dorcas Kimono. Good morning, Dorcas. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. Let's get into talking about this. The cost of fueling up at forecourts has shot up exponentially in recent weeks. What has been said to be the factors responsible for this increase in petrol price?
Thank you for having me this morning. And yes, about the fuel in Uganda, it's really messy. As you can see, we are struggling as a landlocked country to cope up with the fuel prices. It's choking everyone, not the working class, everyone is starving, is choking on cost of fuel, because we have to part for more and divert money that was meant for other needs to cater for fuel. So currently we have a litre going for almost $2, and for a country where majority of the population can barely earn $2 in a day, you know what it means. It means most people are now frustrated, are forced to cut down on their demands, and maybe sacrifice more coins, more paper money to cater for fuel.
Dorcas, has the government been able to state, any of the reasons behind this increase?
Of course, since the inception of this whole rumor and the hullabaloo about fuel, the government has always said it's an international issue. It's not affecting Uganda alone. And indeed, we contend with them that, yes, it's not affecting only Uganda. We have the neighbors here in Kenya. Also, they are suffering the same. They have issues with fuel. Rwanda, Kigali, and the neighboring countries, internationally, it's affecting everyone. But the problem is now the difference cost in Uganda and Kenya. It's slightly higher in Uganda. in the East African region, actually, Uganda is leading. And yes, we don't know the reason as to why Uganda should be the one at the forefront. Maybe because we are landlocked, that we are importing everything, even the fuel tanks pass through other countries to reach Uganda. So that one, maybe someone can be allowed to point at the distribution and marketing cost, taxes inclusive, and yeah, they need to make profits.
Okay. Now, even as we're trying to inquire as to why the price of oil, or fuel is rising, let's look at it from another angle. Crude, which used to be sold, used to produce petrol, of course, and diesel, traded at just under $120 per barrel on the 8th of June, and it's still holding steady at just under $110. Now, the question we're asking is, why do fuel prices keep rising when the oil prices have dipped?
It's a good question, but that would only apply to a country not at Uganda. A country like Uganda, which is at a receiving end, I think it's a little bit obvious. I mean, crude oil doesn't apply in Uganda until maybe 2025, where Uganda will be producing our own oil to understand the issue of crude oil and not crude oil. Because crude oil, even if it's cheap in procession, Uganda is not producing this oil. It's not accessing the crude oil. Uganda receives the final product. So maybe still it comes with own taxes attached. Crude oil bought, wherever it is being bought, and procession and the production of the oil, Uganda receives the final product. So it goes back to the issue of distribution, marketing, supply, and taxes inclusive. So the suppliers in the country or distributors in the country have no choice but to increase one or two figures to make ends meet.
Oh, can you confirm for us, you're currently in Kampala?
Yes, please, I am in Kampala.
So what's, the price of fuel currently in Kampala, and, how are citizens also dealing with this increment?
Currently, the fuel cost is at around 6,000 shillings, which comes to $1.5. Okay, yes, $1.5, and that is already choking. So what Ugandans are doing, it's surprising that with that cost, still drivers would be parking their vehicles. I mean, people would opt for walk to work, but it's shocking that people still drive their vehicles. That one, in one way or the other, it's also increasing on the price, because I mean, even with fuel prices going high, people are still adamant, are still driving their vehicles. So the supply, what they do is just to keep increasing, because of speculation, because of the the increasing demand, people still buy. So it's a few that have decided to park their vehicles. It's a few, like in private sector, a few people have said to park, but the government vehicles still run. It means they're still accessing or buying this fuel. The fuel is expensive, yes, but people are still buying. So the people who are selling keep increasing. In digits, they just add one or two zeros or one figure, and the price will go high. The people who would be parking, who have given up on this, the motorists, the boda, the motorcycle motorists, they have said, some of them have said to opt out of business, most especially those who are using like Uber, who are using international services. Those have decided to withdraw the services, or if they're still in business, then they've increased the cost, the fare for one to be lifted, to be given a lift. So it's still on. People are hustling through the process. They've not given up fully. Very few have. And it's now a common Ugandan who doesn't have a vehicle that uses public service that is really suffering.
I mean, this is a very uncomfortable conversation. We just came out of a fuel scarcity not too long here in Nigeria as well. So we can understand the pinch and how uncomfortable this will be for the people of Uganda. But I'd like to quickly ask you, is this a regular occurrence in Uganda? Looking at 2022, for example, have you had several situations like this year?
Yes, we've always had something of the sort, although the price had never shot to 6,000. It's the first of its kind, at least from my generation. So We've always had is such cases. For example, when our neighboring countries are going to elections, like Kenya, in a period of 35 days, they will be going to polls to vote for a new president. So whenever such activities are happening in the region, Uganda happens to suffer. Because remember, Uganda is a landlocked country. It imports almost every good of ours through the port Mombasa, which is in Kenya. So whenever something of the sort happens, distributors or suppliers in Uganda, due to speculation, Ugandans like speculating a lot. They will speculate about anything. So this, due to speculation, prices will go high. And yes, as you said, some time back, we suffered the same. And currently we're suffering the same problem. Government points at the Russian war and the COVID, business are just recovering. Maybe that's why the prices are going high. But they don't come out to explain why this high.
All right.
So yes, we've already suffered and we'll continue to suffer because of speculation.
And do you see that this is going to get any better, or is it going to get worse? You did mention that the elections have a strong impact. The elections in Kenya, which will be happening in August, does have an impact on the price of fuel in Uganda. Do you foresee that this will be rectified before the elections, or do you think that it's going to get worse?
No, as I said, government pointing at issue of Russia. Then we also know, obviously, the elections in Kenya, there is no hope that this will be rectified very soon. Unless maybe the Russian cause is put on hold, then the elections have happened, maybe that's time in October, November, maybe that's when maybe things will normalize. But at the moment, yes, Ugandans are just bracing for the worst.
Oh, really sad. Dorcas Kimono, thank you very much for joining us from Kampala. And we hope, that there's better news in the next few weeks concerning the petrol cost in Uganda. Have a great Monday ahead.
Sure.
All right. And like we said, these are similar challenges, that are happening, not just in Uganda, in Nigeria also, and of course, other African countries.